Hello and welcome to Reply's webinar on mass remote working. We are using Teams live broadcast today from our London office in Victoria. This is actually my first time this side of the camera. You can't see it, but there's two very nervous interns the other side of this, and just to make it a bit worse, a very senior person in the corner overlooking them. But please welcome. My name is Baxter Willis, and I'm joined by Beth. It's not your first time in front of the camera.
No, I've done a couple of webinars now. You may know me from such broadcasts as migrating to SharePoint Online, but I also work for WM Reply, and I'm a change and adoption consultant. So I'm ProSci qualified, which if that doesn't mean anything to you, it's Microsoft's preferred change methodology. So a bit later on, I'll be talking about change and culture when it comes to remote working.
And to my right and your left, I have Dan.
Hello everybody, my name is Dan Tremere. I'm manager at NetReply. NetReply works and focuses on network security.
Great, and I am Baxter Willis from the digital workplace team here at WM. So why are we here today? You would probably have had to live under a rock not to understand the coronavirus outbreak. And last night, the World Health Organization announced a pandemic. Among many of the kind of headlines you'll be reading is working from home and remote working are high on the agenda. There's some quotes flashing up on the screen, and we certainly weren't the first to kind of act on this, and we certainly aren't the last. And I think the topic will only continue to evolve over the next coming months. So between us, we have digital workplace expertise, and what we want from today is to walk you through what we think are the common pitfalls or golden nuggets of advice for planning for remote working, but not just having people, doing every other Tuesday remote working. This is large scale. We'll be going through digital workplace assessments, culture, and access and networking, variety of topics. What this isn't is a continuity, business continuity or discovery or disaster relief plan. This is us giving advice to our customers, our partners, and actually some of our competitors. It's free for all to join around what we think is good for your planning right now. So why would you bother listening to us? We are from, asking myself many times. We're from Reply, which is a Italian listed company. They own a network of companies, around 130 different consultancies. We're in the Microsoft world of Office 365, but we're head officed in Milan and Turin, where most of our people are based in Italy, which is where we were born as a company. So we really are on the front line and in this together. And I've spoken to many of my colleagues from Italy this week and last who are working from home and going through the changes we're about to talk about today. So among those 130 awesome companies, we have 7 that specialize in what we call digital workplace. So a big topic of that is remote working, which we'll dive into. I'll probably just call out some of the creative people like Avio or Valorum, Reply, who are Office 365 consultancies over in the States, and also Go Reply, who are kind of the Google version. We're Microsoft purists, so we're going to talk a lot about Microsoft, things like Microsoft Teams, but you can really liken that if you want to Slack or whatever your alternatives are. So the guiding principles are really the same. And last on the intros would be who you've got in front of you today. So Beth and I from WM, we build, manage, and roll out digital workplaces. That can be as exciting as Yammer leadership training and big live events, all the way to some boring legal workflows that you need to automate in your company. And NetReply provide the access and security to make sure what we're setting up works for our clients and is safe and recommendable. Last point in there is we don't have a sales team. We are all billable client. There you go. You can tell I don't have a sales team. We're all billable consultants who taken some time out. We had this idea on Wednesday, and you'll see we're not marketers, or as you're about to find out from some of the slides.
Not designers either.
Yeah, that's true. We're project people, so hopefully we can bring you directly some of that expertise. And the stress test that we're going to be reviewing today is your organization. If we play in the imaginary world, is going work from home entirely, or the large majority are going to work from home or work remotely for the next 2 months. And you don't know the end date, but you think it's around 2 or 3 months. This could happen next week, it could happen in 2 weeks. We believe it's a strong likelihood to happen, and we're seeing it happen, in Italy right now. So how are you going to get stuff done? And to tell these stories, we've invented Susie Remote. Well, actually, Beth invented Susie Remote. Would you like to introduce?
I would. So Susie is near and dear to my heart. I work with her all the time with our clients because she's basically the average user that I work with our customers. So she's a knowledge worker. She's office based. She can work from home if she wants to. She's quite passive when it comes to the digital workplace. So if you invite her to an online call, she'll join it, but she isn't running her work schedule in this digital remote way. So basically following Susie's journey to sort of quickly being told, we need you to work from home, definitely. How's she going to get on, and how can we actually enable our people to have as smooth as a transition as that's possible?
So I'm going to start with talking about how Susie gets her work done in the digital workplace, or formally outside of the digital workplace. So we do a lot of these workshops, kind of understanding how people do stuff, and 3 of the key themes that we often pull out are documentation. So I'm building, Word or Excel documents to surface or for my own records, and that works. Those things have been around for a while. Excel, Word, and right now Susie needs to work from home when she gets a delivery. She's not regularly doing that, but if she does, she can work on documents and email them off. So she kind of gets through on an ad hoc basis. She finds information through perhaps a company intranet search, through asking her mate. One of the best places to get information is asking your colleagues who are experts on that. And most of the people she works with are in her office. Not everybody. So her primary form of communication is face-to-face. And she doesn't have a PO, so she is responsible for her own organization. So that's calendars, notes, and organization. So between those 3 things, that's documentation, finding information, and organization. So today, she saves everything to her desktop, which I know people here, and even in reply, are guilty of. And we all know a Susie Remote in that sense. And the way she finds information, like I said, is from asking people. And she might have a written notepad, but she uses Outlook as a calendar. So what problems might Susie face if she comes to this working from home reality? So first of all, if she takes her laptop home and on day 1 spills a cup of tea, which is my favorite party trick, over her laptop, she no longer has access to anything that was saved to her desktop or to her files. So everything in your documentation right now is at risk unless it's moved into OneDrive or a similar product. And that's something you can act on as companies right now. So you can move to OneDrive or set a policy immediately to say, let's all move our files up into the cloud. Now, finding information, if you have an organizational chart, now is the time to make sure it's up to date. Whether the example I'm using here is Delve, which it works off the office graph, and it knows who your manager is, so I can see my subordinates and my managers through the Delve graph. Now, I might go to my manager for a decision, and if they're often sick, which in this scenario we're assuming 25% of people might be off sick at any one time, and their manager is also in that 25%, I might not know where to go to get subject matter expertise or sign off. And there's a really nifty feature in Delve where if you go to visit someone's profile, you can see who they work with and what they're up to. So it knows, just like Amazon might say, you might also like this office graph knows who to speak to, and it can often connect you to someone that you might not be in the org structure, but you might know quite well can help you. And the last one is organization. My favorite app and the simplest app of them all is OneNote. So this is quite literally what it says on the tin, a digital copy of your notes, and you can move text, tables, images, videos. If you paste a link into YouTube, it buffers the video into the book. And I know that people still have a big place for writing notes. In fact, we have our own notebooks which say my other notebook is a OneNote. So every time you do write something down, you're forced to remind that maybe this should be up in the cloud.
And they're not for sale. Only come to a WM event can you receive one of those.
There's a line outside the door for those. You can save, so if Susie ends up moving her documents and notes and calendars to the cloud and sync, she's going to be in a much safer position. And if Susie herself falls sick, she's very easy to share one link to her colleagues, to her manager, to manage that. Okay, how does Susie meet? So right now we're doing a live Teams broadcast to you. We're all in the room, but our next broadcast is Tuesday, and there's a chance that we can't come into the room like this next time. So Susie's going to have to change the way she meets her people. Right now, she goes to a team meeting once a week, and then some of the ad hoc meetings might be online, but mostly face-to-face. She also does what we all do, and Beth is a big fan of this one, the chats, which is the water cooler chat, grabbing a coffee, the side of the table, which we know is informal, but actually informative. So it's not hard to carry data on how much happens in that kind of hushed corridor conversation that we're all familiar with. Then finally, and admittedly, this is a really hard one to manage online, is workshops. So these are creative sessions where you're building ideas, there's exercises, there's breakouts, there's all sorts of different things. And that is hard to recreate, but let's take a look around how Susie might be able to manage those. So I'm just going to do the pop-up here, and you should be able to see, there you go. Teams, I'm going to say the word Teams a lot, but it's a nice visual here, and it just shows the difference of when you turn your video on. You know, when we work with organizations, so often people turn a video on, and it is the next best thing to face-to-face. And the UX and the interface is so immersive now if you turn your video on, especially if you're a leader. I would say if you join a call and you turn your video on, your people will follow you. Whereas, you know, if you don't bother and some unlikely soul has turned it on, it's very difficult for them to do that the next time.
Especially if you're not in a suit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I do recommend wearing clothes.
Clothes in general, please.
Yeah.
But as well as that, I think for me turning my camera on is kind of me saying I'm actually really dialed into what I'm doing on this call, rather than when we're really busy. It's so tempting to be like, let me just reply to a few emails, go on mute, they're having a chat, and there'll be things you'll miss even though you're not speaking. So when you have the camera on, you do have to be zoned in.
Yeah, excellent point. Then that informal chat. So Teams has a chat function that operates outside of Teams and channels. So Instant Messenger isn't new, and you can liken this to a lot of apps. But to have that thread history is useful as well, better than face-to-face in some ways, because if you forget something, you have a record of it right there. And actually, you can very easily add three people into a chat, three people or more into your chat with 2 clicks, and it knows who's in your organization and actually who you regularly chat with. So it's a really easy UX to get there. And lastly, if you think, you know what, we're typing too much, I want to upscale this to a video call. That's one button that turns that instant message into a video face-to-face. And lastly, workshop. If you have the luxury of some devices like Surface Hubs or touchscreen, you can use the whiteboard app. Even if you don't, you can draw and type in it. You can copy images in, you can put tables in there. It does try to recreate, you know, you can use sticky notes, that kind of vibe of being in a workshop and being creative, even if you are remote. You can also put polls in and things like this clickable content in there as well, just to try and kind of keep the energy level up, because we've all been on that long all-day call where we've kind of lost our attention.
Yeah, if you haven't already done that, and you've got any meetings this week that you could have a practice of just making them remote, I would do it, because I don't know about anyone on the call or anyone in here, but I've had sort of 3 workshops for the next few weeks already say to me, this will have to be remote. And, you know, at WM, we do a lot of remote meetings. We're quite in the swing of it. And even we are going to have to kind of think, how are we going to keep people engaged for a full day workshop? So do get some practice in now, because it looks as if that's how things are going to be for a couple of weeks minimum.
It's a really good point, is don't wait until these restrictions are placed. In Reply here, we're all doing a work from home trial day in the UK. So if you don't regularly work from home, do it this week, and you can come back and say, oh, I forgot my charger, and you don't have the catastrophe of the later finding out you're missing something. And I know one of our clients, a big UK bank, is doing the same thing, but actually for 2 days, because they really want to make sure that they catch anything that
catching up with those guys tomorrow, so
Yeah, look forward
I'm
to that.
sure there'll be some panicked phone calls about headsets and the like.
Yeah, headset. Okay. So the last one for me is we've gone through her personal productivity and her meetings, and now how do we get stuff done as a group? So very often when people work from home, like myself, I might try and allocate admin tasks or a writing task that day because I don't feel as contactable in the office. But if I'm going to complete remote working home, that's not sustainable. So how do I get work done as a team? Right now, Susie, relies mostly on email and face-to-face. When they're editing a document, Beth can be over my shoulder, and that's going to change.
Am I off dinner?
And you very right now. And then Susie is actually a line manager. She's got a small team, but during the work from home period, she has a new starter. So traditionally, she would just sit next to that new starter for the first 2 days, walk them through, give them their welcome pack. How is she going to manage? And there is no substitute for looking in the whites of the eyes of the new manager. But how is she going to provide that new starter an experience that is at least the second best that she can? And lastly, decision making. Susie, has to get things signed off, POs, presentations, or communications. She has someone that might sign that off. What if they're off sick? Does she know who to go to? Or do they normally just wait for that person to come back from their holiday? Or what if that person is also sick, the second go-to? Where do we go from there? Can she get her decisions made? And also, is she holding up the business? So there's kind of 3 recommendations across the suite that we would ask you to take a look at. So inside of Teams, you can add Planner to organize your task. And this is going to change that kind of, have you done this? Yes, I have. Or where it, can you let me know where this is? Actually, you can have a board inside your team that demonstrates all the tasks, what's, to do or done. You can create your own terms. You can create your own markings and color schemes, add visuals in there to complete tasks and move through those. This is really, really good for simple to medium sized projects, I would say. We see a lot of people thinking that they have to do everything in Excel now, which is actually quite an antiquated way of managing tasks. No offense to Excel, we love you. Now, for the new starter, and again, I never profess that all of these solutions are as good or better than a face-to-face, but we have for a few clients, and there's a clip in there, created a new starter portal. So it starts with HR saying, okay, we've got this new starter, what equipment do they need, who's their line manager, and that fills in that format and that produces the document for the new starter to work on. And when we can start surfacing things like, here's your new starter form assessment to complete, have you sat down with your manager? And I can start to tick, to sign off, and the progress bar up the top to see how I'm doing as a new starter and what I need to watch. And because we know what department you're in and what your line manager is, we can actually tailor that content so it's not just generic company content. We can put your department leader on there, a video, something like that.
Yeah, and how often has a new starter missed a meeting because it's been a recurring meeting in everyone's diary for a year? So, nobody's thought to add them, and they've actually missed some quite important information to their team. That's the type of tasks that can be automated, and it's just one less thing, and especially with that remote working element added, we miss that stuff when we're in the office.
Absolutely. And right now, if your organization, and I know a lot of our clients are joining where they have teams, but maybe the usage is sporadic or there's no kind of governance behind it, it can get a little bit complicated on what's chat, what's channels, and what is, a team in its own right. So have a think about what your guidance is for that, because if you create these team meetings in a Teams channel rather than through Outlook, and I join the team because someone's gone off sick, I will automatically see that invite and when that meeting has started. Yeah. If it's an Outlook, I won't. So I've said the word Teams probably 100 times now, and I'm going to say it at least once more. But I have this analogy that Teams is like a toiletry cabinet. Everybody needs one, right? But what's inside it differs for how you present yourself or what problems you're facing. So mine, obviously, as you can tell, I have great hair products, teeth whitening, and all the tricks. But Beth might have,
keep it simple. Yeah. Shower gel, deodorant. I'm a chat and call girl.
Yeah. So
I didn't quite mean to.
Chat and Teams schooling girl. She's a chat and Teams schooling girl. Anyway, it's like a medicine cabinet. It's got different things in there, and the point is, we might just need as a team a bit of a planner and use Teams and channeled meetings. Whereas if I'm someone who signs off a lot, I might need a workflow that kind of helps me manage that responsibility if I'm off sick. So this is the time to revisit what you've got turned on, what your governance is. And actually some of these policies, if you haven't already emailed out, reminding people, better still yammered or broadcasted or done something like this internally in your organization about what digital tools are available, now is the time to do that. We had this idea on Wednesday and we're here on Thursday. Yeah, a week and a bit presenting you a live broadcast. So,
and it was Wednesday afternoon.
It was at the pub, I think, actually, wasn't it? Right, and that's me. I'm going to take it back to Susie, who you can see has now got her, well, you're going to take us through the device, but she's got the ability to use these tools on home. But before we let her go home and do that, we need to find out if she has the right access and the security guidelines and set up there for her.
Thank you. So as we've been told, Baxter's advisor, we're going to look into network and security. I'm going to talk about devices, then into access, and then into administration side of it as well, and the structure. So when we're talking about the devices, do all employees have laptops that they can take home? The staff have these capabilities, and do they have mobile phones? Within those devices, do we have good AV and antivirus? And if you're a business that's head of the game, then you may have EDR, which is endpoint detection and response. So that's really advanced.
We knew that. We knew.
Yeah. For the people watching, obviously not myself, could you help me out with what EDR is?
So EDR is starting to be using machine learning, behavioral analysis of devices, and then understand what looks good, and therefore then can tell you when it looks bad, when something else happens to those.
And the other one's bring your own drinks, right?
Yeah, bring your own drinks. Yes. And we'll get to bring your own drinks in a bit, probably later. So we've also then got, alternatively, staff may well be able to effectively work on mobile devices, may well give people surfaces or tablets to be able to work there. So in a similar way, how do you manage those? So mobile device management and mobile application management should be a consideration if you to have companies and employees use those type of devices. I'm sure they've already got them already, but it'd be worthwhile validating that they're fit for purpose, that you've got the latest software on there, and things like that.
I guess for businesses that work heavily with contractors, this stuff becomes an extra layer of complicated as well.
Yeah, so this is an aid to help them, especially when you get into BYOD, bring your own device. Sorry, not drinks. And that is going to really require a lot of management and careful consideration as to which applications businesses want to be used, their employees or their contractors to use off their personal devices. What control is there to ensure that they don't download things, that don't take screenshots, especially if you've got critical business apps. So we'll come to a bit more of that later as well. So our recommendations for the administrators to help Susie work is to help reduce shadow ID, increase control, give your staff clearer guidelines, and explain which tools are approved, so that you can ensure that they're using the right tools and the reasons for using the right tools, such as compliance and security reasons as well. You need to ensure that your data, your software is up to date. It's a simple one, and I know that a lot of businesses do this already, but it's worthwhile making sure that these end devices are up to date and do have the latest software on. Ensure that all laptops, mobile devices can be accessed remotely. Susie may have a problem. She wants to be able to do her work, and she wants to do it on the devices that you've given her. She doesn't want to then have to make do with other devices that could compromise operations. So it's how do you help your staff to work as quickly as possible, and when they encounter problems or they need replacement devices, having a process to be able to help them as efficiently as possible and get them back to work.
Yes, that's the most important part.
They want to be working and focusing on their job, not on the devices and the new way of working.
And it's the guidance around that as well. You know, we have lots of clients with different regulations, and our FMCG clients, accessing their documents on any device is not an issue, but for some highly regulated, there's different considerations.
I'm glad you said that, because soon we're going to talk about auditing and compliance and those side of things. Yeah, okay. So if you have a BYOD policy already, think about how that's going to work on a personal machines and how staff can access confidential information. Advise ways of working during this period. Consider BYOD for general services such as emails, calls, and other lighter touch systems. But for heavily controlled and sensitive data information, you may want to go into VPN services and use those sort of secure channels and VDI services or virtual desktop infrastructure. The next phase, now she's got the PC, we're all happy with that PC and device and mobile devices. We should have a look and see where is she accessing it from and what is she accessing as well. So access control and identity management is a critical thing around security, critical area, and it's probably well-established process in your business. But again, with it being mass remote, you need to understand and work out what might need to change slightly. Are you able to relax the rules to allow for certain parts of the business to use the tools? You need to maybe have a review around that. Also, secure channels. If you've been moving towards public services and public solutions, you're likely to be using secure channels directly. You'll be having, such as Skype for Business has been secure for many years now. As has Teams adopted that as well. So most Microsoft tool sets all natively have secure channels.
Yeah.
When you're looking at your other solutions, you should make sure that if you don't have secure channels, then you should be recommending VPN. Now, I'm going to get to VPN in a second as well, because there could be a large amount of VPN usage when mass remote working. So we need to make sure that that's not going to fall over as well. But expect an increase in support calls. Expect there's going to be loss of credentials. There's going to be people having trouble accessing. And how contended is that user's broadband? Susie's at home, working from home and self-isolating. Maybe her husband's home as well. He might be working. Maybe their son and daughters are playing video games and watching Netflix. So that home broadband could very easily get contended. When you're using collaborative tools, especially real-time communications, may well have problems around that.
Might have to turn that video off on the TV.
Well, last resort.
Hopefully not. Or
Netflix.
Just,
yeah, Netflix.
Shout at kids and tell them to stop watching Netflix and get an old school video or something like that. Let's try and get that clicker working. Stopped.
You're going to do it really theatrically.
There you go. Got it. So yeah, we've touched on access control. Make sure that your patterns of policies regarding access, internal services, especially and sensitive information, clearly explain to staff when to use VPN service, when they could use the thing and connect to public cloud services directly. It might be that some people don't need to be on VPN all the time. They may well be able to have to go directly and not have to consume the traffic that's likely to be for VPN. And the third one is simple: is wired connectivity is much better, especially for real-time communications, than wireless. So if there's the potential that you can plug your device in while you're having those calls, that's a big help.
Such a good practical tip for people trying to work from home. You know, there's extensions cost £4, and plugging straight into Ethernet is a game changer for connectivity. Yeah, there you go. See
Perfect. Right, and now we're going to talk about the infrastructure and operations. So can your infrastructure, this is where we start to get into that edge part of the network, can it cope with the strain of 100% of your staff trying to use the VPN service? In our experience, that it's used and set up for about 20, 30, maybe 40% of usage, not for 100%. It'd be very rare that this circumstance would happen. So let's have a look at that and see whether what can be done around your disaster recovery of that equipment. Can you bolster it? Can you monitor it a bit closer? And also educating the staff to using it at the right time and when it's required, and when not. So some parts of the business may not need to use it at all for their daily lives. Others, especially when you're getting to compliance and regulations, may absolutely have to. There may be auditing trails that require you to be connected internal. So things like, again, this is where virtual desktop infrastructure may work as well, is that you then have your control of that complete device is internal. All you're doing is sending a remote desktop session to go and speak with that PC. So it keeps everything inside and is very good from a security standpoint. Do any of your systems require network routes for auditing purposes? We spoke about. So, sorry. So finally, this is a big one for me, is that I've left to last, is security operations and administration operations. I'm going to go to the next page actually, because it gives a better view of that. But they're used to being.
There you go.
They're used to having a very large screen, lots of screens all around, and being very collaborative when they have experienced issues, when there's any security problems. They've got a whole host of monitoring tools that are up and on those monitors, and showing them what's live in the system, what's happening. See that might be a bit of a challenge for the collaborative working of those teams in their home office. Which looks very nice, but only has one monitor. I wish it was mine.
It definitely for the guitar.
Pretty good. So yeah, it's how are you going to make that easier and approachable for those staff to be able to focus and be able to be effective? There's a couple of things around that, I think, is that can you start sectioning certain aspects off to certain use groups and allow them to focus on just smaller areas, whilst then also increasing the cadence of meetings for those staff to make sure that they are collaborating and that everything is going well. There's nothing that the team isn't aware about, and also using collaborative tools, let people know, open up new channels on things like Teams, so you can have a persistent wallboard, people not updating there, and making sure that there's a process in place, or decentralized process in place for teams to start working. Next, we're going to move to Beth, I think.
So Susie Remote, she's now got all of her devices. She's super secure, she's landing, she's got a connectivity. She's almost ready to start working remotely indefinitely. The last thing I want to touch on is the people side of this type of change. The deck of cards comes down if people can't use these tools. So the first consideration for me is specifically about Susie and its ability. So the first thing we need to build for her is awareness. If you do know ProSci, they follow the ADCAR methodology, which you can tune into one of my other webinars to hear about that.
Cheap plug, yeah.
But basically, the first step in any change is building awareness. And in this context, it's the awareness of what tools I have, what I can actually do with them. When Baxter was speaking, one thing I was thinking about, but the slides ran away, was that, don't start with the tool, start with the problem or the process, what you're trying to fix, and then
in the medicine cabinet.
In the medicine cabinet, it's not should I use shampoo? It's I've got dry hair.
Yeah.
Which is the best tool to fix that. So, and having that awareness of what she's got in front of her is going to be that first step in her feeling confident in that everything she does in the office she can actually do from home as well. Second step, she's aware of all these tools. It's going to be the training. It's, can I use them? How do I do this? I've seen somebody do it in the office, but I never quite knew how to do it. And I still get that today. I sat in the office recently and was like, oh, it's so annoying that my favorite team is like right at the bottom. And someone was like, you can just drag it up. And I was like, little things like that will change the productivity in your day. And I'm just admitting the functionality that I don't quite know, but it's the training is going to be key, and the consideration for this type of working is going to actually be that, how are we going to train people when we weren't planning on having to train them on these tools? So our L&D team might not be able to, and also just that it's going to be leaning heavily on self-learning and online training resources.
I remember when I got trained on a new release that you could just record the Teams meeting with literally 2 clicks, and it's just such a great tip that I might have taken me 2 months to find out on my own, But actually now, if people miss a meeting, there's no excuse because I can record it and send it to them, so they should be up and informed.
And I think that's really key. When we roll these tools out, they're almost seen as optional, and people will find all this great functionality as and when they need it, but we're not going to have that luxury of time. We're really going to be replacing this face-to-face collaboration with these tools. Yeah. All comes back to digital workplace. And then the third thing is going to be support. Now, you know, help desk, I imagine in this instance would be swamped, as Dan was saying, you know, lost credentials, dog chewed my charger, whatever it's going to be, they're going to be very, very busy anyway. So we don't want to flood that help desk with, how do I screen share? But we still want to be able to help our people. So, so the first step is going to be communications, really tailored, specific communications that focus on working from home, you know, remote worker survivor guide. We work with a client that, excitingly, we're building a car park, or they had to knock something down to build a new one. And so what they did is incentivized home working at that time, because pretty much a large part of the workforce drove in. And what they did was they distributed these work from home car parks that had all the silliness in, so PG tips and Kit Kats, take a break, but it also had that important stuff, which was sort of work from home checklist, a headset. Yeah, just those bits of kit that, you know, we've got them lying around in IT, but if I meet all my people face to face, usually I might not have my own personal headset. So just those little considerations can go a long way. And then for training, so, you know, online drop-in sessions, you'll do what you can, but some ways that you can get some quick wins if something had to be put together quite quickly are things like Yammer groups. So Yammer is an enterprise social media platform. Some people call it Facebook at work, but then Workplace came out and upset everyone. No. We're Yammer evangelists at WM Reply, and I love a bit too much a GIF. But what you can see on the screen is a dashboard from a client we worked with, who they did a large migration project, and we set up a SharePoint online user community. At about 470 active members, lots of active posts. So all the posts in that group were very active. When it first started, it was just me posting my weekly Yammer tips. I was a bit sad, but it really took off actually, because they were moving to a self-serve model and people had to help each other out, which is very much what this, you know, situation could be. And then do my little spotlight. What do I have to do it?
Push your own slides. We're not fancy here.
Sorry, I've been a diva today. You know, you can see a post there that gives a really good example of somebody having a really specific issue that your online training and your Microsoft resources, you know, they're not going to address this lady's very specific problem. But then I've got my champion there, Emily Fox, giving really great advice. And you will just see these little champions, or huge champions, popping up. All
champions of all sizes.
Yeah, come on, we're inclusive here. But popping up and giving really great advice, and you know, you can lean on them for other change projects going forward, which, you know, we all know that now, champions, there's a bit of champions fatigue out there, but it does really work well when you can't do that all singing, dancing training program. And then lastly, support. So as I said, we don't want to flood our help desk, and they might not necessarily be in a position, they might not necessarily be in a position to help. You know, help desk might not know Teams that well, or whatever digital workplace tools you've invested in. And that might be where you have to lean on a partner. They might not be as good as WM, but they'll certainly help relieve that workload. They'll give it a go. But you know, projects I've worked on, people are always so grateful for the support, and we don't think we're doing that much. You know, we're sending them some instructions, and half the time we're thinking, oh, like, how can they not know this? But it's helping them get their job done. Like, it does. It really does.
There's a lot of people that aren't digitally aware, or as digitally aware. We're used to it. We work and live in the digital world all the time. So it's, and I suspect that a lot of people who are on the call, they also are.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of people in the world that are not, and it's trying to help the communications and give them the information to help them ease them into this way of work.
Lots of Susies.
Lots of Susies, which is fine. You know, they're good at what they do. Yeah. This is a new aspect to their role, and we have to be patient with them. And you know, I think those frustrations in remote working, where I'm feeling quite isolated, would be heightened. So it is going to be very, very important that people do feel supported. Being as theatrical as I can. And then my second consideration, it was 3, but they were rolling into one. And, you know, we've got to make time for the Q&A, is leadership comms. So the reason this one is so important is that in this, everything that we do at WM is pretty much about breaking down silos and bringing people together. This idea of remote working and isolating people pretty much goes against everything that we try and do with our clients. But one thing that works really well on any project for ACM is visible sponsors and visible leaders. So we're really passionate about pushing that. Now, the danger or the consideration that we'd face is leadership reach. They're not going to be in the office. We're not going to be seeing our leaders. So how do we get them out there? If 25% of the workforce are ill, we're going to have less leaders to lean on, and we might not have our favourite charismatic, you know, CEO who does a blog every month, leaders to lean on. We might have to start engaging other leaders to pick up that slack. And also the types of communications we'll be sending out in this time, they're not the comms we like. They're not that 2020 vision. They're not, here's our great numbers, you know, here's an amazing charity thing we did, pat ourselves on the back, which are great and add to company culture. Probably not what we're going to be sending out during this time. So my advice to leaders, comms, and anyone else who's going to be involved in it, is that a way that we can stretch the leaders we've got is just get creative with how they're sharing messaging. So, you know, using Yammer broadcasts, using different channels that they're not used to, and also channels that are at their fingertips. You know, we don't need to go through 10 iterations of an article, because actually my leaders just posted a quick video saying, hi everyone, I'm at home with Archie, my gorgeous Labradoodle. We're working from home. I've got my tea station set up. How are you guys getting on? You know, that's small action, really big impact. And
I don't think you have to wait for blockbuster quality video communications for leaders. You know, if working from home, we want to hear from our leaders. There's nothing wrong. Phone up, portrait, and doing a selfie video to speak to your people. It's real and it's candid.
Absolutely, the leader is jazzy enough. People want to see the leader. They're not bothered about the nice cushion and studio you've built, which serves a purpose, but we're going to have to make some compromises in this time probably. And then coaching, so having a leadership coalition team and giving advice and run sheets, and we give tips that are sort of daily, weekly, monthly. So there'll be a big action that we want them to do every month. There'll be a medium-sized action, maybe start a Q&A on Yammer weekly, and then the daily will just be to do something, like a comment, send a message, comment on an intranet article. It's something small, but it's that visibility that is going to be key in this time. And also those smaller actions might bring in those leaders that aren't that comfortable doing the big pieces, doing the big, look at me, I'm great, which is a small percentage, but they're out there. And finally, just dropping that wall. We're short for time, but this is the last point for me anyway. But impactful messaging is not about production. It's like what you said about the blockbuster thing. We want to lead from the front. So, having candid messaging from our leaders saying, I'm in the same boat as you. I'm getting to know these tools at the same time that you are, but oh my gosh, I've just realised I can pin channels. Sharing stories and things they're finding out is really going to keep Susie feeling like she's a part of something. We're in this together, and that she's not on her own. Actually, we're just not seeing each other every day. Oh,
perfect timing.
Yeah. Has anyone got any questions about culture and ways of working before we get into the real Q&A? Maybe we should just do that.
Yeah, I'm sure we've got. So we've got a patiently waiting judicator over in the corner. Matt, what have you got for us?
Some questions around, can you elaborate how you getting messages, training, and this style of working? So how can that be used effectively?
Training question, Beth. So the question was, how can you use recording in Teams and video, a bit like this, to broadcast out and train people?
So the broad answer would be however you want. I think that's something we get asked a lot by people is, how should I do it? Whatever works for your business. I think, you know, online drop-in sessions don't have to be live events like this. It can be a call. You know, I've had training calls with 20, 30, 40 people on them. So don't think you need big production style like this live events to do your training. And equally, you can record those sessions. You can record them, pop them on stream, create a channel, you know, remote working training vids, pop them all in there. People can watch them at their leisure. And you know, like I was saying before, and that's why the question is such a good question. It start with the problem or process that you're trying to implement, and we use the tech to enable that. And this is not a plug, but if you have got any processes or things you're thinking about right now in the business, is how could we do that at home? I'm sure you'll be able to get one of our details and we can give you some ideas.
And also what we've got, this is my first time this side, but you know, the microphone here isn't fancy. We've got a webcam in there. This hasn't been too much stress. So we can record this. We could do a screen share. So if we're talking you through something, you know, start where you feel comfortable and maybe just call your friend that you're teaching, do a screen share and record that and see how you feel from that.
How would you facilitate that water cooler communication via remote work?
How do we facilitate the water cooler communication via remote working? So actually, one of our customers, Diageo, the drinks and spirits and alcohol company.
BYOD.
Yeah, where I learned the acronyms such as BYOD. They have a Yammer group called the Water Cooler. And actually, you know, people write poems or they just ask about, you know, is there a lift ride I can get from office A to office B? And I think by actually creating that group, you also keep the business critical groups and important stuff to where it should be. The other thing, I actually read a blog recently, which was, and there's a lot of content out at the moment around tips for personal people to working from home. So we're giving a webinar on how to prepare your organization, but there's a lot of content out there about how to prepare yourself. And one of them is to work, you know, when you have a coffee, try and make the same time that you would 10 minutes to have chat, enable chat, go use Teams, like, well, you can have a face-to-face. There's no reason you have to put a formal meeting in or an Outlook calendar invite to have that one-to-one chat and video.
And again, in terms of driving that forward, get your leaders to start. If your leader starts posting, oh, I saw one of our adverts on a bus the other day, I didn't know we were doing that, it's great. Whatever the, you know, water cooler style chat is, if that's not already the culture in your business, just giving the tools won't be enough. So it is about the, you know, leading from the front element to actually start those sort of ways of working.
Be the change.
Be the change. Sorry, we've had a lot of coffee today.
It's actually good, that follows on well to the next question. So any thoughts on what to do about leaders and managers being resistant or shy about their own skills while the team is actually on board and the collaboration?
Gotta say, lots of change and culture questions coming. I think I'm not going to make that.
The question was, how do you deal with resistant senior people if the team is on board, and how do you convince those people to lead from the top?
Yeah, so historically, managers are the most resistant. Sorry if there's any managers on the call, but they've got good reason to be, because if change goes badly, they're the face of it. They're already very, very busy and stretched, so, you know, more change coming at them. They're resistant because they're already kind of the busiest, most stretched people in our businesses, which is completely fair. One way to engage them, we're going to use that Champions Network. We're going to lean on those guys. You need to spell out to a manager why it's important to them, you know, the what's in it for me. So for a manager, it's going to be, look, you're not going to see your team for the next 6 weeks, but they're still your responsibility. Here's a bunch of ways that you can keep in contact and support your team. That's one way to enable managers. In terms of leadership, it's that coaching piece, you know, and the what's in it for me. Leaders, by and large, want to be seen or want whatever their vision or priorities are to be priorities in the business. One good example was Mark Khan from Network Rail. Very, very busy man, always on trains because, you know, got to lead from the front. CEO. But the way we got the sort of penny to drop with Yammer for Mark Khan was he was basically saying, you know, I want to do all this engagement stuff. I want to speak to the people. I'm busy and I'm on a train. We sent Charlene, one of our amazing ACM consultants and a great trainer, out to see him. She downloaded Yammer on his mobile device, showed him how easy it was for him to see what his people were saying and how simple, while he's on these trains, it was to react to and engage with his people. And he actually became a Yammer evangelist. I mean, during that project, the strategy we took was to train the top 100 leaders and let it filter down, and having that, obviously, CEO engagement really, really helped with that.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say, is to engage with the leaders and let them give them a bit of special treatment, a bit of love, and they will then embrace it as well.
Absolutely.
You can show leaders their peers, who tend to be a competitive bunch, and if they've got a peer leader that's doing a good job and getting some results out of it, you can show them that. And for the person who asked the question, if you don't have any of your leaderships doing that, show them what their competitors are doing. And actually, that's how we started with Network Rail. Well, not quite competitor, but their peers in France.
Yeah, it was a French rail company. And I've got many case studies. If you want me to come and shame your leaders into engaging, I'll do that for you.
Probably got time for another one.
Okay, I've got two short ones.
Short ones.
How can you give any tips on mobile device management, MDM? Again.
The question was, what hot tips on MDM mobile device management? Over to you, Dan.
Okay. So there's a really good thing from Microsoft. This is called Intune. That's really helps with MDM and mobile application management. It allows you to really clearly define what systems, or what business tools, or what documents are able to work on, are able to be edited, seen by people, to be viewed and made changes and deleted and things like that. So it very clearly defines who's able to do that, which teams, which areas, and on what devices. So it helps very much with that really close and intricate management.
Last question.
Last one. At the beginning, you talked about passive on VC. Any tips for drawing these people?
Passive on VC.
Yeah, so the passive remote work. Susie, our golden girl. I'm gonna let you take it. It's digital workflow.
As in, if they're not joining in or turning on, I mean, I stand by the point about leadership. So one of the things we do, Beth mentioned, is training the top 100 leaders and PAs, because if your leader turns the video on, so will you. But also, I guess you can kind of share the differences of your calls, or share your good examples as well when you have face-to-face. Just be brave and keep turning them on. And actually, we as a company have agreed always that we would be video on. And if you have a call with someone from Microsoft as well, they will turn their video on, because for us, we are promoting these tools. And actually, as soon as you see it, it does catch. I guess the other thing you could, there's some facts and figures about what % of communication is body language, and there's a little campaign in there somewhere, I guess, around how to manage that. So we are out of time for questions. I really enjoyed that. I think not feeling too bad for our first live broadcast. I know that Beth is going to do the good news at the end.
The fluffy story, a nun rolled down a hill, found £5,000.
Tell us more.
Coming up. It's our final consideration. So the warm, fluffy feeling, look at Susie now. She's got a diploma's hat, she's got the key to her connectivity, and she's got all of the devices. She's happy, she's working from home. She misses her best work pal, and she can't wait to get in and have a gas. But
oh, you're projecting.
I'm in work. You're not my friend. You're the partner of the business, I'm not sure. But she's got everything she's in a really good place, but making lemonade. So I don't know where our participants are from, but I'm gonna give you a little English, I don't think it's a proverb, it's a saying, which is, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. I think this situation for a lot of businesses, how fast it's come around, might not be as prepared as we'd like. It is a batch of lemons, but the lemonade we might end up with is going to be an enabled and more mobile workforce. So we're enabling our people to, work is what we do, not where we are, which I love that phrase, because when you give people that autonomy in their role, you get the best out of them. Access to a wider talent pool. We've got consultants that live, in Sheffield, and quite random little spots where it's hard for them to find the right role for them where they live. But, giving that flexibility in working and allowing that home working means you've got access to a wider talent pool. A greener, more CSR, corporate responsible business. So, less traffic on the road, people not flying to meetings that could actually be done remotely. you know, you're going to be a greener business, probably more profitable. Those flights and nights are quite expensive, and more prepared for next time. I think, you know, if we go through this and we don't learn anything, you know, we wouldn't want the next time this happens for us to turn around and be like, we're not ready to work from home again. It's 2020, the technology is ready, and we as businesses should be as well. So yeah, thank you very much. One final note to make, other than congratulating Susie, is that if you've missed anything, you know, if you had bad connection, or if you've got colleagues that you actually think would really benefit, we are rerunning this session on Tuesday. Stay tuned to see if we'll be doing it from home, which would be quite an ironic way for things to go. But we are rerunning it, and we'd love for you to pass it on and give us some feedback. We will be asking for that as well. Thank you.
See you online. Thank you.
Thank you.